Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Spock the Week, where, as always, I am joined by my co-host, Gregor Cameron.
Good afternoon, JJ. Am I allowed to say afternoon? Usually
Yes.
give me a row for giving away times and stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure we can let you get away with saying the time of day.
Okay.
Just not what day it is. So, as always, joined by Gregor Cameron, and we are filming in the afternoon today, but we're also joined by a very special guest, Pippa, who has joined us this week on Spock the Week. Thank you for joining us, Pippa.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Oh, fantastic. See if you're still saying that at the end of the recording. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, Pippa? And you've picked the subject, so would you like to tell us about the subject as well, please?
So I picked mental health within the Star Trek universe, and I did that because I work in mental health and have done for a long time. I am a big Trekkie. Janeway is my captain, so beware lots of Janeway Voyager. Yeah, TOS is less of my thing, so there will not be many references to that one. And I just think it's a really important subject to talk about. It hasn't got parity of esteem in the 21st century, so let's explore whether it does by the 24th.
As far as the TOS references are concerned, we can rely on Gregor for that, because he knows a lot more about TOS than me and you put together, to be fair. You're in good hands with the Voyager references as well, so let's say I'm a big Voyager nut myself.
Hey!
More Voyager, and I am going through Deep Space Nine, so another one with Deep Space Nine is Gregor can fill us in on that one as well. So yeah, mental health in Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek has always been one of those programs that has taken an issue, whether it be a contemporary issue or a long-standing issue. Whether they do it good or bad depends on the episode and depends on which series you watch, but they do make a good effort of bringing these issues into the light and into the public eye. TOS did that with race and bigotry and stuff like that, and a few other things. And there is a few episodes in the original series that do deal with mental health. Maybe not on purpose, but they do reference it. We tend to see more of that in later iterations of Star Trek, into like TNG. I think there's how much do you reckon's in Deep Space Nine, Gregor? Is there a fair bit of do you reckon they touch on that a bit in Deep Space Nine?
Come on, Gigi, why do you always do this? Why do you always have to let the side down? Because the greatest episode dealing with mental health in the whole of Star Trek's in Deep Space Nine.
Yes, I'm aware of this, but you're the Deep Space Nine nut. We're both Voyager. You know, so I'm pushing it onto you.
I want, you know, I thought the whole point is that we go towards a crescendo, you know, so I don't want to start with it's only a paper moon and the consummate portrayal of PTSD.
Well, to be fair, Gregor, you could have actually just said, I'll talk about that later and not mentioned anything and left the listeners on the hook, but you
gave me a penalty kick. Give me a penalty. I think there's whether the topic's specifically mental health in general or stroke mental well-being, I think that it's dealt with in a variety of ways and across a number of episodes in Deep Space Nine through dealing with guilt, etc. And I think maybe the first one that comes to mind when you are talking about guilt would be the season 1 episode Duet, which is largely based on an old Maximilian Schnell film where he has been in the film at least, Maximilian Schnell was basically an administrator in a concentration camp and then put himself forward and confesses that he was the commandant of the camp because he had survivor guilt for what his countrymen had done. Duet sort of emulates that storyline, but they do it through the Cardassians and a Cardassian that Kira befriends, and it's done very well, played brilliantly by the actor who his name escapes me at the moment, the actor that plays the Cardassian, and he's a really well-known actor. You'd know him if you've seen him. His name will come to me before the end of the episode. Don't worry. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's just sort of one of the episodes in terms of mental health. But as I say, obviously the ultimate DS9 episode when it comes to dealing with mental health is Paper Moon.
One of the episodes that I watched in preparation, because Pippa, you did make a couple of suggestions for episodes that you felt dealt with this. couple of Voyager ones, which is fair, and I'm reasonably familiar with the ones that you mentioned, but I decided to go out and watch, just to refresh my memory, the episode Hollow Pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did have a vague memory of what this episode was about, and I kind of connect with that a little bit because I do share a few of the aspects that Barclay does in this episode. Very shy, not speaking up. There's, I think there's stuff like the sort of the whole thing about sort of reality, and I think is where this one's going, is like having that escapism, to be able to vent those things that you can't vent to the real person or to real people. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a pretty good episode for TNG in the respect that.
But the big question I had from it was, where is their HR department? The way LaForge treats Reg is appalling.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the way everybody treats Reg, it's when you go into some of the Voyager episodes, where we have where Barclay makes an appearance.
Mm-hmm.
By then, Deanna Troi is his regular psychiatrist or counselor, whatever. Yeah, even she's this. You know, there's a lot of sort of dismissive nature towards that. Which I think was a little bit of an own goal as far as being able to sort of portray it properly. And just briefly, just to touch on a point, because I know this is going to annoy Gregor to the 9th degree, that in recent episodes of Discovery, they do bring out the what I believe to be PTSD in Lieutenant Depp.
Yeah.
I've not seen anything in the subsequent episodes since. Now, I don't know whether they're going to culminate this into where it just blows out, like with PTSD, it can go quiet and then something can trigger it again. I don't know whether they're going to do that, or if they've just quite conveniently gone, oh, well, she's operating normally again, and they've forgotten about it.
The reset button.
Yeah, which I hope they don't do, because they have a nasty habit of doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree, because to me it presents like PTSD, I would agree, and the lack of confidence she has in herself to the point where she resets the interface so that there's a backup, so it's not just reliant on her thoughts and her responses and reaction speeds. It does present that way, and my concern is after she shot around the sky and was able to fly again and she could do it manually, it did seem a bit like, and so everything's all better.
Because that was the chat when the episode first came out, when they first got into, and she was having the issues and she was sort of phasing out of a conscious thought a little bit. There was a lot of people said, if this is what it seems to be, don't just go, there you go, and then leave it alone. This needs to be an arc. This needs to be a storyline that we pick up later on and that they deal with to show how it's dealt with. And again, it's like that's where Discovery has an opportunity to show where we can be with mental health and how we treat mental health. I mean, Dr. Culber, that is a perfect example of how somebody should speak with somebody that has issues, whether it be PTSD or ADHD or anything, anything of whatever it is. That's the way to do it. And I'm just looking at Gregor because he hasn't seen past episode 1 of the 3rd season of Discovery.
I saw episode 2. That was
all right. He saw episode 2.
An answer to your question, I haven't seen the episode where she flew around and everything was all right. An answer to your question is yes, they will have forgotten about it because it's Discovery writers we're talking about. So that clears that one up. It's never going to be spoken about again, much as like nothing's ever spoken about again, because as I've said before, it's not that they've never watched Star Trek, it's that they don't even watch the previous week's episode of Discovery. That's the problem with the show. They don't even watch last week's episode before they write the next one.
I'll try and cut you off before you go off into one of your full-on rants.
But in response to representing or reflecting PTSD treatment, I think it's also to contextualise and somewhat defend Discovery to an extent here, and that's sticking in my throat. It is a drama show. It's not a public information film. And
that is true, yeah.
One of the reasons I switched off after episode 2, this wasn't the only. This was a contributory reason. This wasn't the main reason why I switched off after episode 2. Was the Culber asking Dietmar if she was okay, because it didn't feel like I know it's only 45 minutes long and they've got to dramatise stuff, and they may or may not be trying to make stuff realistic, but it felt to me that, oh look, we're going to this is PTSD, pointing the finger, this is PTSD, and we're going to deal with it, and we're going to show you how to deal with it now. And it didn't feel like it was written from a dramatic perspective. It felt like I had walked into a doctor's surgery, and while I was waiting, I had lifted up an information leaflet on mental health.
So I see where you're going with this, because you want to be conveyed to you in a sort of I don't want to use the word entertaining way, because that makes it sound a little bit off, in a dramatic way, so that
okay, well, let's go back to the Barclay episode where everybody
go for it then. Yeah.
Everybody treats him like
affirmative.
To be fair, with some justification.
And there we go. This episode just became an explicit. Well done.
But the thing with the way they're all treating Barclay is, bear in mind that they're all meant to be exceptional at what they do, and Barclay isn't. Okay, so first and foremost, again, Starfleet isn't there to act as a therapist.
No, but that doesn't mean you couldn't be empathetic, and LaForge just has no basic empathy.
Yeah, but isn't that the point?
What they're not meant to.
Isn't the point? Well, okay, so if the core episode, or if the core purpose of that episode was to show that underneath the surface, no one else knows what you're going through. Okay. So from a storytelling perspective, it was everyone treating Barclay like, he was completely inadequate, which manifested his underconfidence, his lack of belief, and Picard believes that it's his job to get the crew to make everybody up to a standard. Still no hint of any mental health issues there, and it's only through going through that process that they get through Deanna and the holodeck stuff that they discover that actually he may well be perfectly capable, he may well have the skills, but there's an underlying issue that prevents him achieving all that he can achieve. That only got to that point by having this narrative where people were blind to what his problems were.
That actually makes a bit of sense, to just like with the discovery issue there for you. There wasn't the narrative to sort of ease you into what was going off.
No,
so you better understood.
It was a box tick. Oh, we better cover PTSD, so let's have a character from PTSD and let's establish right away it's PTSD, and that doctor picks it up immediately.
I think, to be honest with you, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. I'm not going to agree with it personally, because I think there are some box ticking exercises in Discovery, but I don't think that particularly is one of them. Although, to be perfectly honest with you, I think, to be honest with you, from a TV entertainment drama point of view, okay, maybe it could have been, there might have been something different there. But this is the wonderful thing, we all have opinions, opinions are like arseholes, everybody's got one. To be honest with you, I kind of agree with what Greg is saying about LaForge and Barclay and stuff like that, because at that time, I mean, even to an extent now still, mental health wasn't really, there was still a stigma towards it. There was not many people understood what it was. Not a lot of people understood. I mean, we're now better understanding of things like autism and people that are on the autistic spectrum and stuff like that. I've never been diagnosed with anything, but I could probably count 4 or 5 things possibly that I do that can be classed as autistic, attributes. It doesn't necessarily mean that I am, but everybody in some way, shape or form has these, and we understand it a little bit better now. Whereas back then they didn't, and I think they were trying to sort of tell it from the point of view of the time in which it was told, so that the audience see it from the way that everybody in the world sees it and figures it out the same way. So like Geordie would be like everybody that I've ever known growing up that doesn't understand these things. It's like, oh, I can't. And the reason I relate to that is because there was a guy in school that I went to school with who was he was very, very much ADHD in his behaviour and the way he would behave in class and his triggers and stuff like that. And I remember seeing people talking about him in the way that Geordie talked about Barclay, and they're like, oh, I don't really want to be around this guy. This guy gives me the creeps. He doesn't, it doesn't fit in right. And that's why I kind of agree with what Gregor's saying there, because that shows the reality of what's going on. And then they get to well, hang on a minute. This is the reality that you think it is. When we get to the meat and bones of what Barclay's going through, then that's when we sort of realise, oh, well, maybe this isn't the true reality. This is the true reality. This is what we see, but this is what actually is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, it is obviously written in the 80s. I mean, the Community Care Act didn't come in until the 1990s. So I mean, I do see that. And particularly if you take Guinan as being the more hopeful future voice, where she says about, if I felt no one wanted to be around me, I'd be nervous and late as well. And she is the voice of how we should be, and Geordie is the voice of how we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, Geordie can talk. He can talk. I mean, he can talk. This is the man who created his hologram girlfriend of the designer of the Enterprise, and then got caught. He can talk. That's all I'm saying.
I know. I thought it was a slightly hypocritical stance when he was looking at it. It was like, well.
Do you think this was just a happy accident as to the story they were trying to tell, or do you think they were trying to tell this particular element of the story as well, regarding how we take virtual reality? So, like, we have games now, like simulators and stuff like. I mean, we've had The Sims, for example, and there are other sort of immersive online avatar style simulators on the internet that you can go and. So the whole thing of how reality and virtual reality and how we differentiate between the two of them, do you think that's something they touched on there, or was that just a happy accident?
I think it's possibly a bit of a meta point about the importance of distinguishing fiction from reality and how fiction can be easier to live in. I think sometimes, particularly with things like Star Trek, because it's such an immersive franchise, you can get people who get sucked in a little too far. Perhaps it is, as I say, a bit of a meta point on that. But whether that was deliberate or not, I'm not sure.
Going back to what we were saying about the storyline and how, Gregor switched off from Discovery because he felt like it was just being box ticking and stuff like that. Now, that, for me, it's like the story element of it, which I think is getting to. There's a lot of people that watch Star Trek to the point at which it's practically a religion. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And people do take it very, very, very seriously. And then there are people that are casual with it. I mean, like myself, I enjoy watching Star Trek. I take it for what it is, and a piece of entertainment, a science fiction show that I love. But would I fight somebody over disliking or liking a certain one? No, I wouldn't. I watched, like I say, the episodes, Apollo Pursuits, and the recent episodes with Discovery and that, and I was like really invested in them because of the way the way they've done it, but the fact that they're actually talking about it, the fact that they're actually putting it there in a mainstream TV show, and it's getting there, and it's, because let's be honest, even though we are more aware of things like mental health issues, there's so many, not the fact that there's more of them known, but they're still not fully understood. I don't think, personally. I mean, I see it all the time in my job as a bus driver. I see people of all different walks of life and all abilities, both physical and mental, using our services, and I'm pretty clued up on how to approach, how to deal with certain situations and stuff. But I see other people around me, some of my colleagues, some of the passengers, some of the general public around. When you have somebody, for example, there's a gentleman who has a routine where he stands up, he gets all his, he has a checks all his pockets, does the whole routine before he gets off the bus. And you hear people, in the background, chanting away. And that says to me that there's still a distinct lack of understanding.
Oh, there's a huge lack of understanding.
You know what I mean?
Huge. I mean, the condition I work with most frequently is usually schizophrenia or schizoaffective, and the misunderstanding and misinformation around that is staggering. Mm-hmm. So the amount of people who think people diagnosed with schizophrenia are dangerous, it's just not true. It's statistically untrue. and yet you hear someone walking down the street responding to voices, and people like dodge them because they think they're going to get a smack in the face. It's not going to happen. So yeah, I agree. The misinformation, the lack of information, and poor understanding is huge.
And I think, to be honest, I think there's a medium here now that Star Trek is gaining in popularity from new audiences.
Yeah.
And I know, like I say, there's some of the old Bastion, Gregor included, that are not huge fans of the new stuff. But hey ho, you're not going to please everybody all of the time. But I think, do you think that they have an opportunity here to do what the original series did with modern contemporary issues such as mental health, and put it out there, even if it is obvious and a little obvious for us? Do you think it's a good opportunity for them to use this medium to push that?
I suppose what the question there is, do I think all big franchises with large audiences have a duty to kind of portray these things accurately and things? I suppose I do think that. I think it's part of the human condition, and therefore it should be explored. There's plenty of physical injuries shown all the time in Discovery and then older series as well. But mental health is 50% of your health, so it should be equally represented. So yeah, I suppose I do think they absolutely should do it. And even if it is slightly box ticky, which I didn't really see, I don't think it was portrayed necessarily in the best way, but I don't think it was box ticking. I do think that is a positive thing because, as I say, it's 50% of your health.
Even if it gets people talking about it, I mean, we're doing this now. We're talking about it. Would we honestly be talking about it if they never touched on these issues? Exactly. So, Gregor, are you still with us?
But I think, in terms of, it's back to the way they tell the story. It's it just doesn't work for me. And if you want to compare, if we would just make a comparison on the PTSD one, if we compare Discovery's opportunity to tell a PTSD story over 13 episodes with a character who may or may not be a main character, we don't know, she's only ever said 8 words through every episode she's been in, and how the Marvel movies portrayed Thor's PTSD in Endgame. He never, there wasn't a resolution for Thor and his PTSD at the end of Endgame after 2.5-3 hours of film. He still had it. He then realised he had it. When you meet Thor at the beginning of Avengers Endgame, he doesn't know he's got PTSD. At the end of Endgame, he realises he's got something and he has to go and find his way to deal with it. And that took 3 hours of movie to get there.
I've never seen that. I've seen Jessica Jones, though, which has similar, although from the off that's the diagnosis, but it takes a very long time and you see reoccurrent symptoms all the time.
I think with PTSD as a subject matter for something like a TV show, there's so much to it. There is so much behind it, and both in the actual condition itself and also the treatment of the condition and all that sort of. So it's a very difficult subject to, I don't know if accurately portray would be the right way to say it, or to put it across in a way that works, because that's the thing. I mean, we can here.
I think the word is encapsulate.
Encapsulate. Okay, yeah, I'll go with that.
You're not going to, unless you're making a documentary, you're not going to make an accurate portrayal of treatment or symptoms or anything like that. And as I said earlier, these are, let's bear in mind, this is television drama. So you can try and encapsulate what it is, and it's important for a viewer to see something, regardless of how accurate the portrayal is. If the show gets the message over to a viewer who can see something in themselves or see something in someone that they know, in the case of mental health, then it's been a successful portrayal.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's not a documentary. So,
and I think that's where a lot of these producers and writers and showrunners and stuff like that, they get a lot of stick where they shouldn't be getting any stick, because they've got to provide an entertaining piece of television for 45 minutes to an hour, and also bring in these issues. And like you say, it's not a documentary. And at the end of the day, like you say, if you recognize something just through what they're doing, what they're seeing, and what they're, the acting and stuff like that, then that's the job done. It's brought it out there. It's got people talking about it. But I think this is a point you probably will agree with me on, Pippa, is that it's, if you're going to do that, at least get the basics information right and correct.
Yeah, I think, well, in order to do what you were saying about, recognizing something in yourself, you have to have some degree of accuracy. You can't completely fictionalize it. So one of the other episodes I mentioned to you was Extreme Risk, the Voyager episode. Now that, as a portrayal of self-harm, is incredibly accurate. It's very, very good. And so, although it's an unusual portrayal of female self-harm, it's still, her responses to it are really, really solid.
That was the Bedlam episode, wasn't it, where she was
she was flinging herself around the holodeck without the safety.
It was self-harm Klingon style. That's the.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to describe it.
I do remember that one, and I think that one's a really good sort of like. To be honest with you, that was one of those episodes where it was like, I get where she, because it's like there's that need to fulfill a certain aspect of her life that she no longer has, being a Klingon and stuff like that. So the Klingon side of her is not getting what it needs, and she's like, it's just constant. Because Tom Paris he's like, what's going on? And he's like he's the other half of this coin, as is the case with most relationships. When one person has an issue, but the other person is not aware of that issue or doesn't understand that issue. And it's that sort of getting that communication between the two so that one can help the other and vice versa. I felt that a little bit, because it's taken a long time for, say, me and my partner, for her to understand some of the problems that I have. They're not huge problems, but they are problems. Anxiety is the biggest one that comes to mind for me. That is something I definitely have tablets and everything for it, and I'm no longer on the tablets because I self-medicate, for want of a better word, because I use meditation and mindfulness.
Found other coping mechanisms.
Yeah, and it works for me, because I've always been one of those people that I don't want to be, when I'm 80 odd years old, rattling because I've got that many tablets inside. But you can shake me like a Pez tube and I'd rattle. But that was, that episode, Extreme Risk, was a good example of that for me. How it's not just the person with the mental health issues that can suffer. It's the person, it's the people around them as well. So it doesn't just affect the one person. It can affect the other people around them. I think that was a good one for that.
No, I'd agree. Tom, is trying to ask her how she is all the time, and she's just like, I'm fine, I'm just tired. And he's all, well, you're actually more like you're asleep. So he recognizes the issue. He sees something's wrong, but she's refusing to communicate, or cannot communicate, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, I'd agree. He's definitely got the sort of, like, the carers, for want of a better word, around her, and how that's impacting, as well as the wider crew.
It's that understanding of, like, when you're in that situation. So, for example, like Balana's, that need to get the adrenaline rush. For me, like, that sort of, I need to sort of do something a certain way, but I feel like I know what's wrong, but I can't explain that to my spouse, my better half, my partner. And I think that's another example in that episode, that it's sort of like, from the outside looking in, it's difficult to see what's happening, but it's also from the inside going out, it's difficult to explain it to somebody that doesn't know. And you've got that vicious circle, a never-ending circle of misunderstanding and inability to make somebody understand, and I think that was that's where I take it. And again, that goes back to what Gregor was saying earlier on about you seeing something in what you're seeing on the TV in either yourself or somebody else.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think that is an incredibly good episode for that, because it is portrayed quite accurately. So the way she looks in the mirror, that whole scene where Balana's just looking at herself and she's not really recognizing herself, that's very common with depression, to not recognize your own reflection. And so there is a lot of little things that you could be able to recognize yourself in, and maybe if you watched it, it would then prompt you to be able to do something. Not that that's necessarily its job, but at least it would be a reflection of your reality.
And there was what was the other episode you mentioned?
Night. That's the one where they get stuck. Confusingly, they get stuck in the void, but there's another episode called Void. So it's...
Yes, we've had this conversation several times, JJ, about those tea.
There was we for the USS Albert, our Starfleet International chapter that we're both me and Greg are members of. We were doing Voyager watch parties for the 25th anniversary, and one of the episodes that we were, well, while we were doing that, when we were doing the early episodes of Spock the Week, we were touching on, was it mental health we touched on? Was it isolation? That was the
that was the very early one we done.
It was a second episode, I think it was.
I think it was Stephen picked it, but I think we were doing the virus. We were doing stories relating to viruses. He'd sort of picked that as isolation in relation to lockdown, etc. But you got mixed up, I think, between the two of them.
Yeah, there was that sort of, because we went to go and watch it, and there was like, hang on a minute, that's not the right one. And like you say, there's an episode which is rather confusing, but
yeah, I do it all the time.
I think
they did it in Enterprise as well, just to add to the confusion. So.
Oh yeah.
So,
honestly, I mean. We're, like I said, we've mentioned we're both Voyager fans. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, there was a missed opportunity for Voyager to touch a lot more on issues like isolation, anxieties, and stuff like that. Because I'll be honest with you, 7 seasons in, they're doing pretty well for people that have not seen other human beings in decades.
That whole scene at the end of Caretaker, where they're all just mingling and chatting, and it's like, you wouldn't be like that.
No, you would not. I mean, I don't know. Have you ever seen that meme or that? I can never say that word right. I don't know if it's meme or mem. I don't care. I call it meme. But there's a picture of an astronaut on the moon, and the Earth has just been kiboshed. You know the one about kiboshed by a meteorite, and it says, "What would you do in this situation?" And it's I don't. You know what? It really. That's what I think. It really does get me a little bit, but then again, that goes back to the whole, it's a TV show.
It is, and Voyager massively suffers from the reset button, like massively.
Oh, honestly. It's amazing how quickly that ship got fixed after the year of hell, by the way.
I know.
Yeah, given that they weren't supposed to use the replicators, and I presume they used the replicators to make parts.
They also had, like, goodness knows how many photon torpedoes, despite initially saying they had to ration them. And how many shuttles did they get through?
Oh, God, they've been going on about this in... I'm going to name drop another podcast here, the Delta Flyers with... I don't know if are you listening to that one, Pippa? The Delta Flyers with Garrett Wang and Robert Duncan. Yeah, that one. It's kind of a running thing. I think they're trying to keep count of how many shuttles they actually lose. And it's honestly, I love Voyager, don't get me wrong, but don't even get me started on the Kazon. I mean, somebody...
When they meant to represent New York gangs or something, and it just didn't play out well.
It didn't work, and I think, to be honest, I don't think it was the portrayal of what they were trying to do with the Kazon. That didn't bother me as much. It was the prosthetic, it was the look. It's like somebody had some leftover Klingon or some Klingon prosthetics that just didn't work well, and they just went, and it turns out, I actually found this out, that in the hair they have those little sort of, I don't know whether it's cartilage or what, I don't know what it is it's supposed to be. But they actually used pig's ears for that. There was actually pig's ears that they used for bits of that, and I'm like, okay.
But this was one of Voyager's great failings, was, and this was probably Rick Berman's fault, to not have it serialized, which it was in its original concept. It was going to be 7 separate storylines.
Yeah.
In each part of space, it was going to be a whole season-long arc, and then Rick Berman decided, because it was the network show, and at the time Deep Space Nine wasn't a network show, that's what they were going to do. Have Deep Space Nine as a syndicated show, and the money would all go into Voyager, and they made it episodic. because Year of Hell was meant to be one, the Borg Space was meant to
Yeah.
be one, the Vidians was meant to be. These were all meant to be season-long arcs, and I think this is why ultimately the Kazon, because they were bit part players, I think, because they come back in season 2, don't they, when they capture the ship?
They come back in
Yeah.
season 2,
Yeah, but
and I think we don't see them again after that.
Yeah, they're not fully developed at all. They don't get a chance to
And
develop.
it comes across as a slightly cheap shot, because if I have such a misogynistic race with, at that time, Starfleet's only, well, Star Trek's only female captain that you really see. That's how I felt.
I feel, to be honest with you, I think there was a lot of, on that particular subject, I think one, as much as I adore Jerry Ryan and I love the character of Seven of Nine in the later seasons of Voyager, I personally don't agree with the reasons behind why she was brought in the first place.
No, which is why she and Kate Mulgrew ended up in that spat.
Yes, which is now all resolved and all happy families and everything now. But can you blame Kate for that, though? To be honest with you,
no.
Can you blame her?
It to be specifically not to be sexed up like that, and then you come on and introduce someone who, I mean, what she looks like is kind of irrelevant, but what they made her wear is what made that very obvious sexing up.
I'm so glad that they toned it down a little bit later on.
Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, some of my favourite episodes, I forget the name because I'm not very good with names of episodes, which is my failing. But the episode where her, and this is actually a specific for the topic we're talking about, but the episode where she has all the personalities from all the Borg, years in the Borg, and they all come out. So it's a bit, kind of a little bit like, maybe, I don't know if it's like schizophrenia or if it's multiple personality, possibly.
Dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder, possibly, unless you thought they were just like voices in her head and she was responding to them, which would be more psychosis.
But honestly, that has to be, for me,
brilliant.
One of Jerry Ryan's best. It's one of two, because she does another one where she
Body and Soul, where the doctor is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I remember reading somewhere or an interview somewhere where Robert Picardo was like, it's like, I was watching myself. I could have shut my,
Yeah.
But yeah, should we talk about Deep Space Nine, Gregor? Because I feel like you're feeling a bit left out here.
If you want, yeah. If you want to talk about Deep Space Nine.
You mentioned a paper moon.
Yeah,
so
we'll come back to that. Let's not finish. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. We'll get back to paper moon. But I think that in terms of mental health, I mentioned Duet, but this is not specifically talking about an episode here. I'd like to talk about Garak and his mental health in Deep Space Nine, because obviously he's isolated, he's exiled from his people, etc. But we see storylines where with Garak we are covered by addiction, and Wired, I think, is the episode. We see his inadequacy of living up to the his father. Don't spoil it for JJ, he's not got that far yet. We see him with claustrophobia.
Oh, that's a good episode, that one.
As well. So, there's a lot of stuff going on with Garak there. And I think the claustrophobia one you see a couple of times, actually. So it's an example of it not being forgotten about.
You could also see him being really reckless, like in The Pale Moonlight, where he deliberately acts in ways where he could have potentially been seriously harmed.
Yeah. So maybe not from a therapeutic point of view, but from an observational, seeing the way people behave sort of thing, and recognising signs of something not being quite right in their behaviour. I thought that was quite well done in Deep Space Nine. I think they missed a bit with not Jadzia, Esri, and her confusion and settling into being a person. Whereas Jadzia, I think there was a big opportunity there missed to talk about the more complex issues that would go on with the Troll, the multiple personalities that they have. I think the only time they really go in depth with Jadzia is the one where she has the ceremony where they all come out, and she has to get her friends to take a host and then the murderer gets out.
Yeah.
Jadon or something like that's his name. And there's you get a bit of conflict with Jadzia hard past then, but you don't really see it that much. Whereas Ezri, certainly for the first half of season 7 of Deep Space Nine, and you're witnessing her adjustment because she wasn't ready for it, she was untrained for it, it was thrust upon her. You see a very good portrayal of it. A lot of DS9 fans don't like Ezri. I actually, in many ways, prefer the Ezri portrayal of the troll to Jadzia's in many ways. But speaking of Ezri, what is it, JJ? Go on.
I've not gotten as far, obviously, as the Ezri Dax episodes. However, I would say that I do prefer her version than Terry Farrell, because I've met Nicole Boa, and she's such a wonderful person.
But Terry Farrell's so cool.
I'm not to take anything away from Terry Farrell.
I've met her a few times, and she's hilarious.
To be fair, I mean, for what I've seen so far, because I'm, like I say, me and Gregor are doing a rewatch of Deep Space Nine, and from what I've seen so far, Jadzia Dax is, I mean, the way she deals with Julian, it's, I mean, I'm loving that. I'm loving that. I mean, this is something we touched on in one of the episodes we've already recorded for the Deep Space Nine watch through. And it's how I related to Julian Bashir when he initially comes out and he's like, "Oh, look at me, I'm on the frontier of space." I'm like, you know, and it's like I likened him to an excited puppy, you know. It's like, because I would be exactly the same. I mean,
he needs to be put back in his box occasionally because he just.
I mean, Gregor will agree. That's me. I mean, I get excited and a bit carried away sometimes, and I need to be, you know, muzzled every once in a while. But
yes. Pick a task and stick to it. I keep telling you that. Pick a task and stick to it. Stop adding bits on. Did I give you my NASA analogy last week?
Refresh my memory.
Okay, so when NASA, and this is what you need to take a lesson from, when NASA decide to go ahead with a mission, right, on the day that mission gets the go-ahead, that's it. The mission is locked down. They do not add to the mission at all. And any technology that exists on that day can only be used. So any technology that comes along after that day does not go in the mission. So they only work with established technology and an established mission parameter. If they want to do anything else, they need to go and start another mission. That's how NASA do it.
Where's the spontaneity?
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Well, it's hard to be spontaneous when you're firing billion-dollar rockets into space.
What about when you're recording a podcast on a 30 quid microphone?
Speaking about Ezri, that brings us to Paper Moon.
It does. That is a very good episode. I do see what you're saying.
The reality of it, I think where the reality, I'm not a health professional obviously, but I think where the reality comes into Paper Moon and PTSD, it's in Aaron Eisenberg's portrayal and what the character is going through. I'm guessing there's an element of reality in the clinical side, the treatment side, and although it's a 45-minute episode, it takes place over 3 weeks that he's spending in the holosuite, and it's I guess the story arc is that he's not cured at the end, and it's kind of forgotten about us because he goes back into battle in a few episodes anyway. But you've not got there.
I have seen that episode. I have seen that episode because we did actually watch that episode for we did a tribute to Aaron, and we watched that episode because, as Gregor rightly said at the time when we did this, that it is one of the quintessential Nog episodes.
Oh yeah,
it really is. And I to be honest with you, even watching it as a standalone episode, got given the background to, because I think we watched previous episode where, because of where he got his injury.
Siege of AR-5.
Siege of AR, yeah. So we did watch that one as well. So I got the background to what was going off in his Paper Moon. I found beautifully brilliant about that episode is that I found myself totally invested in Nog's character in this episode, in what he was going through, the the emotion, the wanting to shut everybody out. I felt myself drawn, and I think that is both a testament to the way it was put together and to Aaron's acting ability as well. So the combination of the two put together just draws you in, and I think that's a perfect example of how you can portray.
But it doesn't end with Nog being okay. It only ends with Nog realizing that something's wrong and he has to deal with it. That's how it ends.
And I think that's the important thing with that, is that it's not getting. Everybody wants a solution now, and I think that's what's wrong with the world right now. Is everybody wants a solution to a problem now, not in 3 or 4 years' time. They want
right. There is a huge immediacy to solutions. And I need something now, I need it yesterday. And it's like, no, this will literally take months.
And that, I think, is great, because it's like you get to the point where it's like, okay, I know what the problem is, I know what the issues are, and I'm going to deal with those. And I think that really just says, look, this isn't something that goes away. It's not something you can click your fingers and be done with. And that is a better message than any other, to say, look, you can't fix this overnight. You might not ever be able to fix it, but you can try. But it starts with this. That's why I think that one was a pretty damn good episode, to be fair.
It is a fantastic episode. I mean, as you say, the ending is left as a whole, just a recognition of the problem. And I think it ties actually quite close to Night and not the Void, because although Janeway's not diagnosed with anything and it's not there, the end, the crew prevent her from essentially killing herself. But there is no solution to that. You don't get any resolution to her guilt and how awful she's feeling. And those, what quite frankly present as feelings of suicidal ideation, they continue and they come up periodically throughout it. And I sort of see it as a similar notion, that it's like these things still keep going, but people keep going.
Well, this is our motivation for Endgame, isn't it? You know, this is the motivation for Endgame. So even when she's got them back and they've been back for years, she still goes back in time to get them back.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Earlier.
Yeah,
yes.
Whatever you think her motivation is for that, whether you think it's Chakotay or Seven or whatever you think, or she feels so awful for having stranded them there in the first place, she sacrifices her current self. So yeah, I agree. There's this constant thing with this feelings of suicidal ideation with Janeway, and nothing is all right, which again you do see with Nog, but that has a slight reset later on, and it's not mentioned so much.
I think on the subject of Endgame, I mean, I feel there should have been more. I mean, we probably could have gotten maybe a special or a movie or at least one more season out of Voyager, but I felt that was, you know how you get something, there's a good thing going. You know, and a TV show gets a bit of momentum going, and it's like, oh yes, and then it just goes, oh, by the way, that's it, done.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you watch? Have you seen either of you seen Man in the High Castle?
I've seen the first season. I started to watch season 2, and then I sort of lost interest because it was too slow.
Well, it's one of those where it's one of those, if you get invested in it, you're invested in it. I found that it was a bit slow to start off with, and then it started to gain up a little bit. But that's another show that was guilty of this. Okay, that's it, done.
Well, I found that with the first season. The first season, it was like a small thing would happen in an episode, then a small thing would happen in an episode, then a small thing would happen in another episode. Then you got to the last episode, and there was a big twist, and you're like, okay, but could you not have put a bit more filler before the big twist? You know, actually put a bit more story into the other episodes. So that's what I felt with the Man in the High Castle. But can I talk about Star Trek episodes that have traumatized me?
Go for it.
No.
How many lights are there?
No, I was going to talk about These Are the Voyages, because I've never been so angry in all my life as I was at the end of These Are the Voyages, because there was no excuse for it. There's some excuses for some bad episodes, like Shades of Grey, there was a writer's strike. There was no excuse for These Are the Voyages, and I'm glad Brannon Braga stood up at Vegas one year when I was there and says, look, it's my fault and I'm sorry, and I'd like to publicly apologise for These Are the Voyages. He also apologised for Threshold.
Oh, no, Threshold's a joy.
There it is.
See, I keep telling JJ it's the best episode ever, and he doesn't listen to me.
It's also awesome. Who doesn't want to see people evolve and have lizard sex or whatever it is?
You know what? I love it just as much as you guys, right? I genuinely do. What annoys me about it is Threshold is Gregor's favourite bone to play with. It's like every opportunity he can to reference it, to talk about it. I mean, let's be honest, every season of Star Trek has a lemon episode. Gregor would probably say Discovery has more than one, but that's his personal opinion.
TNG masks, anyone?
Yeah.
I've never quite understood the hatred for masks. I mean, it's not great, I'll give you that, but I've never quite understood the hatred for it.
I think, to be honest with you, I mean, I don't know if you would class it as the lemon episode, but I think one of a poor episode for me in TNG is Code of Honor. I felt sometimes cringe in that sometimes. I really do cringe watching that. It's not like the lemon episode, when I refer to a lemon episode, I mean like the one episode that is just that bad it's good.
What's the one where Deanna Troi starts flying?
Oh God.
What's that one?
Oh, what, the two eyes in the dark?
Yeah, she starts flying. It's like,
yeah, that is.
Or any episode where Deanna and Crusher have those ridiculous leotards on.
Sub Rosa. Who doesn't love
Sub Rosa?
That's the one I was trying to burn out of my memory, but there it is again.
No. So you got the lizard sex, the ghost sex. It's all good.
But honestly, I mean, the only problem I've got with Threshold, and Gregor has the same problem, is that Paris gets to warp 10, he morphs into 1,000 years worth of millions of years worth of evolution, and we end millions of years of evolution, and we end up back where we started. Okay, that's my first problem. We go back to being lizards. We came from.
I think you're overthinking it. You've just got to roll with it.
But the main issue is, so the Doctor manages to reconstitute his original DNA and bring him back to being a fully functional human being, and it's like, why didn't they just not talking about the show, because we wouldn't have had all those wonderful episodes post, but if this was a real life situation, which it isn't, but if it was
you haven't got to warp 10 and suddenly found yourself with
and it's like, I'd be like, wait a minute, if we go to warp 10 we could be home in weeks, yes, but we have to evolve into lizards, yes. But you can turn us back into humans, yes. And what the hell are we still doing here? Let's go.
I think they were worried they'd fill the ship with lizard babies.
But isn't the whole thing with Warp 10 that you can occupy anywhere in the universe at any given point?
Oh yeah, you could. Yeah.
So why didn't it just warp to Earth, give them a message, and then warp back?
The other ship that does. Oh, the Heart of Gold in The Hitchhiker's Guide. That's the other one, isn't it? That exists simultaneously in all points.
Oh, I mean, Q. I can never say that word. Can somebody help me out here, please?
Omnipotent.
That's the one. Thank you very much. Why didn't Janeway? Because she was, she had such a wonderful rapport.
With her. I don't blame her.
Who was in charge of the hydroponics on the Voyager again?
That would have been Kes.
Early on.
Right. So why didn't she grow mushrooms and got home instantly?
Oh, here we go.
She was only 1 year old and hadn't realised the mycelial network yet.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, seeing as we have brought this up, right? Seeing as they have brought the mycelial network up, the mycelial network. My bugbear with season 3 is they're jumping around the place like there's no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, didn't they say in a previous season that jumping through the mycelial network was killing the people the beings that lived in there?
What did I say earlier?
They didn't watch the previous episode.
Exactly.
But wasn't there a fix-it where Stamets got stuck in the mycelial? No, Thingy got stuck, and there was some solution to that, so they didn't harm the network. I swear there was.
Yeah, not to do it. That was
an alternative to that.
I don't know if they did. I think they just said we won't use it anymore.
Yeah, no, you could be right.
And where are the Romulans? I mean, I've not watched it, but where are all the Romulans whose warp drive is powered by a singularity?
Yeah, so why would the dilute burn have affected them? It shouldn't have.
Yeah, it's the
that is an
Romulans.
interesting
Where are the Borg?
I think
Where are
they're deliberately keeping them out of the way. Well,
there aren't any Borg actually. I mean, obviously they show up in Picard.
I think, to be perfectly honest with you, the Borg, now, they were the best villains in Star Trek for me, originally when we first seen them.
Yeah.
And then Janeway went and domesticated one. They've never been the same since for me. I mean...
No, that started with Picard. He was the first
with
one.
Hugh.
Yeah.
You have Hugh, yes, but it was given an individuality, yes, fair enough, but then he was like, on you go, there you go, wait, whereas when I say domesticated one, she was on the ship for 3 or 4, she was there for a long time, and she's still here. She's annoying Picard now.
She had certain feelings about her and didn't want her to leave.
I think there's a few. I mean, the thing is we're actually one thing I will say, if we're talking about species in Discovery, is we're seeing, not in the forefront, but in the background, we are seeing Tellarites, which I don't think we see a lot of in other seasons. So we're seeing a lot more of them. I mean, fair enough, they're all getting blown up, but we do see them. That's an interesting thing. I think, to be honest with you, I think, like I say, I was going to say the Borg were the greatest TV sci-fi villains ever, but that would be completely incorrect. As a Stargate SG-1 fan, that would be bad. No, even better than Cybermen. Replicators. Those. I mean, there's no dialogue with the replicators. They just reproduce, eat everything in sight.
Like a tribble.
A bit like a tribble, but like if a tribble
like
and a
JJ.
Dalek.
Like a JJ.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, well, we have been going at this for, must be at least an hour by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, we would love to continue and chat about all things Star Trek and all things relating to mental health till the cows come home. But unfortunately, the linear nature of time, and I have borrowed that from Dan Decker, so I do apologise, Dan Decker, if you are listening. I've stole it. But yeah, we have to come to an end at some point. We would like to have you back on again. We haven't scared you off by now.
Are you talking to Ian again here? Or listener?
Yes, our one list. Hey, don't knock it, right? At the time of recording, we are now worldwide. Our biggest audience is in the United States of America, in Texas. Or it was.
What we're going to do, though? What's going to happen to our audience when everybody's got their hobbies back and we're all allowed out again?
Yeah. That's point.
Wait a minute. When this goes out, maybe we are all allowed out. I may have.
Well, I don't know where.
Why would you say that? Now you've just cursed it.
I think I will break the dating rule on this particular podcast, because we are recording this exactly 5 days before we go back into a 3-week lockdown.
I like your optimism. 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm being optimistic. I'm being optimistic that it's only going to be 3 weeks. If when this goes to air and you're still in lockdown, do not hold us to that. Oh, honestly, I mean, that is something we could discuss in a completely different vein, is how this has all affected everybody. The fundamental, what I will do is a personal thought from myself is just do what you can for those around you. We have this wonderful thing. We're recording this via Zoom. There's not just Zoom, there's Skype, there's Facebook Messenger, there's the telephone. You know what I mean? If the person on the other end of the phone that can't get out, hasn't been able to get out, just talk to them, just ring them up, Skype call them, whatever. That is better than nothing. And that is the thing that I think we all need to remember is we are doing this in a world where we can communicate. It's not ideal. It's not brilliant. I personally am sick to the high teeth of it, but it is what it is. So stay safe. Do what you need to do, guys. If there's anybody left listening to this and they haven't slit their throats by now, for this morbid talk of, or me just yapping away, thank you for listening. It's been an absolutely great pleasure. So as we always do, where can you be found? What are you up to these days? And is there anything you would like to plug, talk about? Anything at all? Now's your opportunity, Pep.
That was grand. I really enjoyed that. That was really interesting, a good exploration, some interesting discovery conversation. I would quite like to dive back into that at one point. And yeah, that mycelial network question, I'm now going to have to watch series 2 of Discovery to find out. But yeah.
I'm not going to watch it.
You will never get a positive.
Not going to put myself through that again.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Guys, thank you for listening. Ian, thank you for listening. He is. We often joke about him being our only listener. I mean, the one show where we had no downloads was the show he was actually on. Because he was actually there listening to us. No, thank you very much, guys. I'm going to leave the show closing actually to Gregor this time for a change. I'm going to put him on the spot and let him close out the show.
Let me close out the show.
Yeah, let you close out the show.
Oh, okay. Well, you've already said thanks, Ian, but I'd like to pass my own personal thanks on to Ian in Aberdeen. Thanks for listening and downloading once again, Ian. Thanks to Pip for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Would definitely love to have you on again, and we'll definitely have to have a Discovery chat. That is for sure. And hope you've all had enough. I don't want to date it, but hope you have a lovely Christmas and New Year. Or maybe you've had a lovely Christmas and New Year. I don't know, because I don't know when this is. My clock's not working. I went through a wormhole. I seen this figure in a sort of like Red Angel outfit, and I decided to follow them through this wormhole. So I have no idea what the date is at all. And there's some intelligent life around here somewhere, but I don't know where. But maybe I'll find that out for the next podcast. And thanks for listening. How was that for a finish?
That was all right, actually. Yeah, I think you did well. Don't know if I'll let you do it again, but
try and stop me.
Well, you are in charge of the recording, Gregor. So yeah, that would be difficult.
Right. Okay.